Hey everyone, welcome back to the Old Music Matters in That podcast. I'm your host, Brian. And today I welcome a special guest from up there in Buffalo, New York. We got Greg, aka Stabbed by Prongs. How you doing today, brother?
Good, thanks.
No worries. And I guess how you been recently? I guess what's new?
Working on a new record, probably an EP. And I've been working in a studio around town as well recently too. So keeping busy musically, plus the day job, dogs, all of that. So keeping busy.
That's for sure. And is it just strictly you, or do you have some other people that kind of helped out? Because it was more like the electronic music I was listening to last night.
Yeah, so the music is mostly all me. There are a couple of exceptions to that rule in my output, but mostly I compose the music, and then there's a number of vocalists that I've been working with over the last couple of years who lend their talents as well. So music-wise, it's me, and then kind of a revolving cast of characters for vocals and lyrics.
Oh, so it's like a Game of Thrones in a way. So
a little bit, except nobody gets killed.
Get their head squashed in like a grapefruit in a way. So, actually, some of the songs I was checking out last night. Let's see. Actually, you did a cover of "Heat at the Moment." Which band actually covered that?
That's Asia.
It was Asia. I was to say, unfortunately, I heard it too many times at work because, unfortunately, when you're at work, it does a playlist, and then at some point it circles back to the beginning. So you hear the song like 2 or 3 times a day. So it gets annoying after a while.
It could be a lot worse.
Don't jinx it. So, but the other ones were "Stay" and "Fall of the Empire." So,
okay.
I guess we'll talk more about those in a little bit here too. But
sure.
First off, Greg, welcome to my podcast here, mate. And the way this is going to work is, I just want to ask you some questions. I want to get to know you more both as the individual, but also as a musician as well here too. So, you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So I guess to start back in the beginning, he was just a wee little lad. So I guess, who are you, and how did you become a musician?
So I'm Craig Dravick. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I guess I was always really interested in music. I can remember being interested from a really early age, just like, my parents would take me to church and people were playing guitars and I was interested in that. And my mother usually had music on in the house when I was little. My family is not musical. It's kind of important to note that they can't carry a tune to save their life. They're horrible. So I don't really know where this actually all comes from. But I was always interested. And then when I was around, I think 6 or 7 years old, my parents started to nurture that interest. I took guitar lessons, kind of wandered away from that. When you're a little kid, you pick things up, you put things down, go play baseball and come back to things later. So around the time I was, I don't know, maybe 14 or 15 years old, I became interested in playing guitar again. Got involved in some bands, and this would have been like the early 90s. So, sort of at the tail end of the hair metal, pyrotechnic, shred guitar thing, and going into alt rock. Went to Woodstock 94. Never heard of these people called 9 Inch Nails before. And they just like melted the place. And I kind of had a little mental revolution there that style of music was really appealing to me. It was really not anything that I had ever been exposed to before. So from there, I started to get really into electronic music, 90s industrial, KMFDM, Frontline Assembly, God Lives Underwater, that kind of thing. And here I am a number of years later, still at it. I did have a long break while I was working. I'm a software engineer, so working as a software consultant didn't leave a whole lot of time for music. And then during the pandemic, suddenly you find you have all this time when you're locked down, no place to go. So I pulled all of my stuff out of storage, started with a little corner of a room in the attic, and now the thing has grown to the entire attic. So I have a little bit of a problem, but it's a fun problem. So here we are.
Actually, when you saw 9 Inch Nails, was it kind of that similar situation with Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark? When they open up the Ark and the face all melting and people getting blasted through with some Spears or something? Was it sort of that sort of experience?
Yeah. I mean, it had that kind of impact. Like, I guess I never realized that keyboards could be angry. You know, my exposure to that was new wave and that kind of thing. And now going back to, now that I'm older and have gone back to that style of music, there's a lot that I like in new wave. But when I was, 14, 15 years old, that just didn't really appeal to me. I was listening to Metallica and things like that. So out comes this band and they're covered in mud and they're got synthesizers everywhere and everything looks half broken, and the show starts and it's just one after another, like being run over by a tank. Yeah, just an amazing show and really changed my outlook on what could be possible.
That's cool. But you never really got into the death metal, because obviously you hear about Cannibal Corpse was big out of the Buffalo area there too. And
Yeah.
some other ones.
Yeah, it's I don't go that extreme in metal, so wasn't a huge Cannibal Corpse fan. Obviously, being from the area, I know that they're from the area. There is, or was at the time, a big metal and hardcore scene in Buffalo, punk rock, alt rock. That kind of thing is still really big around here as well. Not so much electronic music, but metal and alt rock and punk and hardcore. Yeah, I love Fear Factory. I love, thrash metal, but don't really get into the Cannibal Corpse end of metal.
A little too extreme. So
Yeah.
Actually I did see them, and I will admit they killed it. I'll tell you that much.
Cool.
So
yeah, I would see them live. I bet they're great.
I mean, you're just looking at Corpse Grinder with the way he's always doing the windmills, I like to call it there too. I think like he's been doing that for 30 plus years already. Jeez.
Yeah, he's probably got issues with his neck at this point. Some of these guys, as they're getting to be, 60 years old now, they come down with all of these weird physical issues due to headbanging for 35, 40 years.
Actually, no. I mean, he was still going strong. I mean,
cool.
I mean, I even made like a little short of it on my YouTube just to show it, because all right, it's gonna sound weird, but actually, this is actually one of their song titles. They're like the opening parts of "I Come Blood." He just went through the whole thing. So, I mean, he was going strong. I'll tell you that much.
Nice.
That boy. So, represent Buffalo, New York.
Nice.
So, I was gonna say you're also brutally honest with your parents and everybody else in your family too, saying no one was musically inclined.
So. Yeah, no, and like terribly. So, like my brother growing up, he would sing and I'd just be like, dude, you got to shut up. You're really not good at this. Pitch is terrible. Timbre is terrible. Like, everything's terrible. I am not a great singer myself, but compared to my family, I'm an absolute rock star.
I think he just wanted to do the whole breaking the guitar deals at the end of the show. So. I guess, it sounded like you officially started this project, during COVID, or was this more recently?
Yeah, during COVID, and when it started, I would say that there wasn't really there wasn't a plan. I just pulled things out of storage and I had a band in the early 2000s, and when that split up, eventually moved. And when I moved to this house, just everything never got unpacked. So just unpacking everything, setting things up, relearning the equipment that I had, which is now really out of date. So bought a few things, sold a few things, kind of got a setup that I was happy with, and just thought, whatever comes of it, comes of it. Maybe nothing will come of it. Maybe something will come of it. And started to just rekindle the fire for making music again. And then you start to reach out and try to find people to do that with, right? Like your first instinct is, let's start a band. Let's get some people together. So tried that and just really didn't have any luck. As I mentioned, this is not really a big city for electronic music, and just not really having any luck finding people locally that were interested. And the people that were interested wanted to pull it in this direction or that direction, and I kind of wasn't feeling that. So I just thought, well, why not take it as far as you can, and then reach out and find some people to fill in the blanks, right? Whatever it was that I wasn't going to be able to handle or unwilling to handle. And that was kind of the genesis of the project. I tell all of my collaborators that I decided a long time ago to just musically take what the universe gives me. So if a good collaborator is put in front of me, then cool, I'll work with that person. If a band happens, then cool, I'll work with the band. But if nothing happens, then I'll just do as much as I can with the skills and equipment that I have available to me and figure the rest out as best I can. So that whole do as much as I can and figure the rest out is kind of the ethos of this project. For the most part, it's all DIY. I record most everything here. I compose everything here, and we're sitting in my studio. Mix everything, did the mastering, pretty much, the guest vocalists and on a handful of tracks, and some people had some input on the music, and the rest is DIY, which is something I'm proud of, for better or for worse, right? I'm sure there are gaps in my skill set that other people could do better and maybe improve the music, but it is what it is. And it's a representation of where I'm at with my life and what's going on and what I'm able to do that comes out in each song that gets released.
So I guess where the name Stabbed by Prongs come from there, because
it came from my dog's prong collar. Just needed a name and was walking the dogs one day and thought, oh, that thing stabs him in the neck. He's stabbed by prongs. That's kind of cool. And so that stuck.
I was say the universe talked to you that day.
It did. Yeah, completely random.
Yeah. So, all right, that explains a lot there. So,
it had a ring to it. And, you can abbreviate it SBP. It has kind of a ring to it. And I ran out of reasons not to use it. So that's what we went with.
I think people would probably mistake it for a metal band at first there too. So talk about stabbing or anything else there too. I was like, that's so metal, man.
It's really interesting because I'm like very sensitive to, and I hope this doesn't come out as me kind of trashing my peers or anybody else working in this genre, but there's a lot of, I'm just going to call them cliches, right? Like, and I'm wearing a black KMFDM t-shirt, so I'm kind of repping what I'm kind of railing against, but there's so many just like everything is kind of cut from the same cloth, right? Like everybody's got black hair and black t-shirts and black nail polish, and they have a gothy sounding name and, all of that. And I'm kind of trying to stand a little bit aside from that. And the music is doing that as well. There's a lot of pop influence to my music that is not typical of a lot of industrial bands that I really like, that I gravitate to. So trying to be a little bit different, and the name kind of goes in that direction as well. It's sort of, metal, but not over the top, I guess.
I could say it kind of keeps some of that thrash sort of 80s influence, if you want to say
sure.
it. So I don't know. I think maybe we'll go with like Slayer territory in that case. So I wasn't sure. Wasn't sure if you were a fan of Slayer at 1.2 or not.
I'm a mild fan of Slayer. Yeah, sure. Who doesn't love a good Slayer song?
Well, we wanted to scream Angel of Death there too. I think people would look at you funny afterwards. So I guess that band you were mentioning earlier, were you kind of dabbling into a little bit of thrash, or I guess what was it?
Yeah, so the band was called 3 Pound Mind Trip, which is an interesting story because I put out a single. It's probably been almost 9 months ago now, called 2 Steps Back. 2 Steps Back is actually a 3 Pound Mind Trip song. And I was able to, I have an Access Virus synthesizer that I've had for like 25 years now, 20 years. And was working on another track and went to save a sound I was making and realized that I had like wrapped around the memory, and I was starting to get into where I had saved all of the sounds from 3 Pound Mind Trip. So I realized that I actually had all of the sounds that I needed to reproduce that track if I wanted to. And I'm still friends with pretty much everybody in the band. So even all these years later, I'm still friends with those guys. And so I reached out to the guitar player and I said, hey, do you want to play on this? Like, I'm just doing this for fun, but do you want to play on this and sing on it? 'Cause he was the original vocalist. He was like, sure. So that's how that all came together. And that band was, more along the lines of I can't believe I'm going to say this. My ex-bandmates are going to hate me. More along the lines of a Linkin Park kind of thing, right? So it was a metal band with electronic elements rather than an electronic band. And it was of that time, early 2000s, when the Korn and Linkin Park and that kind of thing was going on. So we again fit into that, but not really, because we were more on the electronic side than any of those bands were.
I guess we were doing the Mr. Hahn sort of turntable sort of style with the electronics.
Yeah, without the turntables. I was playing keyboards. I was doing a lot of sequencing, and trying to layer that in with what we had going on with the guitar, bass, drum side of the band. Is trying to, I don't know, I guess split the difference between where like a Nine Inch Nails was at that time and a band like Linkin Park was at that time.
Rest in peace, Chester Bennington. He was still a boy every day. So I guess what was the reason the band broke up? Was some guys wanted to try to take it further and go on tours, or just create differences?
No, it was, interestingly enough, it was a 4-piece band, and everything worked well because the decision-making had reached an equilibrium, and we added a 5th person, and that kind of threw the vibe off. And it's, you know, Sean, if you're watching, it's not your fault, man. If anybody that we added would have thrown the vibe off. So I guess there was a delicate balance there that just we managed to upset by being a little careless with our personnel decisions. And ultimately, 3 guys went one way, 2 guys went another way. And then the guy I went with moved to Maryland, so the whole thing kind of fell apart. Then I got busy with work, and 15 years went by until COVID happened.
So it wasn't really an official statement. It was just more of quite by accident, to say the least.
Yeah. It just stopped happening, I guess.
I guess how they been recently? I guess they try to still do shows every now and again, or they just
yeah, we're not doing shows. Our drummer is a professional drummer now. He's been making a living playing drums on cruise ships. So he'll go out for a couple of months and play, 3 shows a day on the ship. Our guitar player is a superintendent of public schools. I'm a software engineer, and Randy, our bass player, had moved all over the country and recently come back to Buffalo, and actually just hung out with him about 2 weeks ago. So it's good to see those guys when they're back in town. But we're too geographically scattered to really think about ever making anything happen again with that band.
Is this one of those moments where we cue the Thin Lizzy song "Boys Are Back in Town"?
They haven't all been back at the same time yet. That would be interesting. It's usually just one of them at a time.
I guess so. So, all right. That's good to hear. And I guess you mentioned COVID a couple times here, but obviously it seemed like the music-wise, it seemed to be the whole birth of Stab by Prongs and everything too. But I guess how was it for you personally and family-wise?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty challenging, actually. At that time, my mom was having some health challenges, and she went into a nursing home, and that, like, coinciding with COVID, like, that would have been difficult enough even without COVID. But at that time, it was like every other day when I would go visit, I'd have to test and sit there for 15 minutes and wait for the rapid test to come back, and they'd close the place down if there was an outbreak, and then you had to worry about her and was she okay? And sort of at the same time, I had a relative who had cancer, and she was not doing well to begin with, and then COVID kind of sealed the deal there. So a bit of a real mixed bag, right? Some very low lows, but also some good coming out of it with reconnecting with music. And just in general, like I mentioned my job a couple of times, for a long time, that was the primary thing in my life, and I enjoyed it. I'm very good at what I do. I've always wanted to write software since I was a little kid. Always loved computers and technology, and that obviously plays into this as well. But having that opportunity, or being forced, I guess I would say, to really throw it in park and just experience what it's like to have that kind of time. And to think about what's important to you when you've got all of this chaos going on around you, and people's health is impacted, and you're not sure if, you know, people are going to live or die in some cases, is a pretty heavy thing. And I think I came out of that experience really with a different set of priorities than I had going into it. And just wanting to have other things in my life that were important as well. And making sure, obviously, on the people side, that I took what time I had left with my mom and family in general, to just try to do better with being there for people, rather than kind of being in my own little world and working 10, 12 hours a day and just concentrating on that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Actually, did they allow you to work from home, or did you have to go to an office?
Yeah, actually, I've been working from home more or less for the last 20 years. Most of my time as a consultant was work from home. So I've been at this a long time, and I'm actually one of those people that I struggled a lot initially with not working, because there's, you know, nobody else is getting up at 5 o'clock or whatever to leave the office. And when you're home, an email will come in and you'll think, oh, I can just fix that. It'll take me 15 minutes. Another one comes in, I can fix that. It'll take me a half an hour. And before you know it, you're like, how is it 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm still at work? So I had to really learn to set some boundaries, to make sure that I had some kind of work-life balance. Maybe I've gone too far in the other direction now since COVID. I'm kind of turning in more of a, it's 5 o'clock, I want to get out of here. If there's nothing really pressing, I'm leaving. But yeah, so I've been working from home for a really long time.
Yeah, I do remember the early days. I still remember the day when the whole COVID thing actually hit. Down here, I live in the Pittsburgh area.
Okay.
So March 15th, 2020, the day the world stood still, the way we wanted to call it that. So after that, I was finally working from home, and I went 2 years actually doing that, which was, I'd say, the best part of it. I mean, I just got up, and my computer's right there. I don't have to get dressed or anything. So
yeah.
So, and then when at least 5 o'clock or 4:30 rolled around, I was like, all right, time to call it a day.
I'm done.
I'm done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I can understand why, but I guess maybe it got a little monotonous after a while. So
that's true. Yeah, that's true. And you have to be creative with ways to get your socialization in. I tended, obviously not during COVID, but in other times, I tend to like work from coffee shops, or we did have an office in Rochester, so I drive into the office once every few weeks just to be surrounded by people. So yeah, I mean, you learn to cope with the situation that you're put in, for the most part. And I don't really have a problem being a little separated socially from my coworkers. It actually allows me to concentrate on my work more than it normally would. So it for me, it works out. I'm pretty good at it. Not everybody is like that though.
Oh, so you did a little restaurant industry experience too.
Yeah, not really. Hanging out in them, but yeah.
I didn't really work behind the counter, that sort of deal.
No, I worked in a grocery store, which is why I said you should be careful what you wish for with your work playlist, because man, I suffered through a lot in that grocery store music wise.
You got the coffers and all that stuff with all its crazy things too.
Yeah, I had more than enough of yacht rock like 20 years before yacht rock was even a thing. I was done with all that.
All right, fair enough. But on a serious note, are you and the family been doing okay? Did you guys get real sick with COVID?
Yeah. I mean, since then, everybody's been well. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Sounds good. You see, you and the family are doing well there, mate. So good to have you along here for the ride. So I would say I have interviewed a couple of people from the Buffalo area, and one of which I'll give a shout out to, Swill. I'm strongly recommend you go check him out, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Simon and his Indian curry, by the way. So
Yeah, I actually know somebody in that band, Scott Kent, the guitar player. He and I went to high school together. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's a small world after all.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know,
gonna have to reach out to him and let him know that we were on the same show. That's kind of cool.
I was almost going to call him Steve. So sorry, Scott. So, but don't hate it for it too. It's been a while since we last chatted. So shout out to Scott and Simon, by the way. So those are the two I interviewed on the podcast. But
cool.
But the question I brought up to him was what they thought about the music scene these days. So are you like more in a suburb of Buffalo? And I guess what's the music scene like?
I'm right in the city now. So Scott and I grew up in the sticks, out in a cow town, and I'm not actually sure where he's located these days. But I did my rounds in the suburbs and eventually settled in the city. I've been here almost 13 years now, right downtown. So I am closer to the scene. I'm also old, so I don't get out into it as much as I'd like. Really have to make an effort to get out more, as I've been doing some recording for people and kind of on the lookout for people to work with, and just need to be more plugged into the scene than I currently am. So I'm not a great resource for what is actually going on here right now, but I do know, just through the grapevine, that there's still a lot of there's a lot of really talented people in Buffalo. There always has. The music scene here has always been sort of outsized for the size of the city and the, I'd say, credibility we have. Let's say in the wider music industry, it's not the first place you think of, but we talked about Cannibal Corpse, the Goo Goo Dolls, Three Dog Night, Every Time I Die, go into the metal and hardcore thing. So we have had a number of bands kind of make it out of here and get out into the world. And there's a lot of talented people playing in clubs and, still playing for people at 1:00 in the morning in a little bar downtown. There's still a lot of that goes on here, which is really cool. It's comforting to know that no matter how old I get, that still happens.
That's good to hear. But I guess, are you a big Buffalo Bill fan too?
I am. Yep.
Sorry about last year. So
for all that entails. Yeah. Well, I should be apologizing to you because Steelers have been not awesome for a few years. You guys are kind of stuck where we were, where you're like just in the playoffs, just out of the playoffs, like never seems to actually be your year, but you're always kind of close enough to make people angry when it doesn't happen.
Hey, we still got the winning streaks and all that stuff. So we kept it above 500, we should say. So,
cool.
But actually, I was trying to remember how far you got, because I did have Josh Allen in my fantasy. So
he's a good player to have.
There were times, but like when he was playing against Miami, it was almost like that was not the right time to have it because the defense was coming alive, so they were doing a whole lot more run game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of bad. But there were a couple games.
Yeah, but he scores a lot with his legs, so you get the full boat of points for that, as opposed to a passing touchdown.
Well, not all the time, but I will admit the last couple games, he Ned Miller was like 40, and the highest I got was like 56 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was the one where he actually caught his own pass or something. It
was a pass it was a lateral to a receiver, and then the receiver threw to Josh as the receiver. So he didn't, I don't know that he caught his own pass, but yeah, close, something like that. He was the passer and the receiver on the play simultaneously.
That's that'd be pretty good there too. So, all right. But good luck this year, mate, in football season. So we'll see what happens.
Appreciate it. Maybe this will be our year this year.
Maybe. We'll see what happens. So I guess let's go into the studio right here too. So what you got? I'm seeing the lights and all that stuff there too.
Yeah. Well, behind me, I guess I can scooch out of the way. That's sort of my mixing rig. So still using a fair amount of hardware. When I compose, it's all hardware. So once things get into the computer, it's really more a matter of just like tidying up and getting a mix down. typically I work on an MPC, so all composition starts on the MPC. Get a good drum groove going, pick up a hardware synthesizer, and try to get a bass line or a lead or something interesting going, and just build it out from there. Because I spend so much time on computers at work, and I've got repetitive stress issues in my hands from that, so just like sitting there with a computer and software synthesizers doesn't work for me. It's painful and not really what I want to do after a day at work for recreation. So I'm still a hardware guy. I still have I've collected a lot of this stuff over the years. I still have a lot of equipment from the 2000s. So for folks out there who are fans of like the Crystal Method, 90s KMFDM, and sort of classic industrial, if those guys used it, I probably had it. Some of it I've had since then, and some of it when I got back into this during COVID. And a lot of folks are now into more of like analog synthesizers, and the virtual analogs from the 90s were anyway relatively inexpensive. Like, oh, I can snap up a Nord lead for $400. I'm going to do that. So brought a few things in. But yeah, the core of the sound is really still Virus and the MPC and the Nord lead, which is the Virus and the Nord lead were the core of the sound back in 2002. So even though I've collected more stuff since then, I haven't really strayed too far from that as far as what my go-tos are.
I did that. So you really suffer from a lot of carpal tunnel because of that old stuff?
Yeah, I have. I don't know. You probably can't see them, but they're wrist braces on the desk behind me. I can't really work on a computer without them. So yeah, it's better for me to use physical knobs and pads and buttons than it is for me to sit there with a keyboard and mouse. And I just don't find it, I just don't find it all that creative to work that way. That's not a knock against anybody who does. I kind of wish that I could, because you can just pick your studio up in your laptop and go wherever and make music. And certainly I do some of that, but it's a lot cheaper too than collecting all this crap and having all this stuff and having to have a room specifically set up in the house for it, and all the cabling. There's just miles and miles of cabling in here. The last time I tore this room down and put it back together, it took 3 days. So there are a lot of reasons why I wish that I had different preferences, but such is life. That's what works for me.
Yeah, as the saying goes, it is what it is. So,
So I try to get everything on the hardware to at least where I've got a really good sketch of what a song's going to be, and then I'll record that and kind of shop it around. It's almost like I make a demo and I shop it around to interested parties to see if I can attract anyone's attention for the stuff that I'm creating. And usually when they get to the point where I've got a song roughed out, somebody will become interested in it and write lyrics. And a lot of times things change pretty substantially once people do that. And I like to not go too far down the road of really filling the song out until they've done that, because if I don't leave room, people kind of do their narrow fit in the song thing. And that's not really what I want when I have a collaborator. I really want them to take it in a different direction. I want them to say, you know, I hate where the bridge is. I'm going to put it here. Is that okay? Like, yeah, absolutely. Chop the thing up, do what you want with it. Because when it comes back, it's usually cooler. The best example of that is the song 111 on the Stab by Prongs record. That's a vocalist named Ryan White. He is actually a local guy. So it's fun to work with him, because he comes here and I can track him here in my room on my mics and get exactly what I want out of him for how I'm hearing the song go. But that song started as just like the original song that I gave him is so buried in what he sent back that it's a completely different song. He took that song in a direction that I would never have taken it in myself, and it's much, much better for it.
I guess, do you have a vocal booth, or is he just kind of do it like right there on the floor?
So I have a vocal booth. It is not great and it sounds terrible. So I tend to not use it. It's very bass heavy and it's very dead, and it works really well if I know that I'm going to really stomp on the vocal with effects. So it's issues with the bass. I can chop those off. That's not a big deal. And I don't have a lot room noise in the vocal if I'm going to start running it through distortion or crushing it or something like that. We're in my attic now, so there's a second identical room at the other end of the attic that I have my guitar gear set up in, and I typically record more natural vocals in that room because it's a bigger space, and I get a better sound that I have to do less to in order to get like if I'm doing like a pop vocal or a rock band or something like that, I'll record people in there.
It's funny when you mentioned about the keyboard earlier, because I did a subscription with Masterclass for a little bit there. And it got boring after a while, so I pretty much canceled that whole thing. But the one I actually did watch was with deadmau5, and he was like just talking about how they have this application where all you have to do is just simply now press a button, and now it gives you like the whole electronic beat and everything right there, right off the bat.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah, and I'm kind of maybe a standout in that I don't think that there's really much wrong with that, right? Like now there's a big to do about AI and what its role will be in music, and of course everybody's looking forward to the day when AI will just write music and we won't need people at all, and maybe that'll happen and maybe it won't happen. To me, that's besides the point, right? Like that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this for the satisfaction of creating it, right? Like putting out that first record took me 3 years. And sure, I was basically starting from scratch because I'd been out of this for 15 years and knocking the rust off of my playing and learning my gear and putting a studio together and figuring out how to mix, which was not really something I did much of back in the day, that I've gotten really into doing. Like just learning those skills is fun and satisfying, right? And who cares if nobody listens to the music? Does it matter? To me, it doesn't. I mean, I'd like people to listen to it. That's why I'm talking to you, right? I do put my work out there and I try my best to attract interest in it. But at the end of the day, who am I actually doing it for? So I think if you're out there and you're using these kinds of tools, and if you're pushing one button and the entire song comes out, like it's clearly not the same thing. But if you're using these tools as a way to get started or a way to be creative, like how is that different from what the Beastie Boys did when they rip off a Led Zeppelin riff and put it in License to Ill? I don't see the difference, right? So if people are out there doing really creative things with these new tools, then I'm all for that. Go for it.
So I guess it kind of ties in with the AI deal next. I guess, do you dabble in any AI for music, and I guess even work-wise?
Work-wise, sure. At least I'm keeping my eye on it. I don't think much of the coding assistants yet. And we could have a really long conversation on sort of the ethics of that and the idea that, I think even far into the future, it's unlikely that AI is going to be able to just spit out complete programs that work flawlessly. But it can get you even today, it can get you a good portion of the way there. But it takes an experienced person then to look at the output of the AI and say, well, they whiffed here and it used this technique, but that technique's not really appropriate. We should use this other technique. And so I worry that as we go along and people my age with my experience level, I've been doing this. I graduated college in 1997, and I've been coding professionally since then. When I retire and people my age retire with that level of experience, how is the next generation of developer going to learn that skill if they're not doing the grunt work that the AI is now doing for us? And I think that's again, we could talk about this forever, right? But because in society, that there's a parallel there where if we now have this great tool that allows talented and experienced people to work 4 or 5 times faster than we used to be able to, that's great. But what happens when we get to the point where those people age out and now nobody actually knows how to do that work, and we become completely reliant on the AI to do that work? That's a little more scary, and something I think we have to think about as a society. I was having an interesting conversation with somebody along these lines yesterday, and I said something to the effect of that this is the second time, the first time being the atomic bomb, where we've really invented something as a species where we kind of need to sit down and all get together and think, what should we do about this, right? Because we've really invented something that's really, really, really disruptive and potentially in a bad way. And so I think it's time for people, not only with AI, but social media and the amount of information people have access to in general. We all have to have that little bit of soul searching to say what's important to me, right? I believe that if music is important to a listener, we all know those people out there that have, a room full of vinyl records or, a $5,000 stereo system. Those people aren't going to listen to AI generated music. They're just not. That's not what they're there for. They're going to find people who make stuff that they like. And so we're going to have to be explicit in our support for that. We're going to have to spend our money on it. We're going to have to turn up at shows, or we're going to start to lose it.
That's for sure. Actually, when I brought up this question here too, it always seemed like it kind of delves into what now I call the Skynet conspiracy, or the whole Terminator deal.
Yeah.
So
I'm less worried about that. I'm less worried about that, but I'm more worried about. I don't want to turn this into a political thing, but I'm more worried about whether our political leaders in the world, and especially in the United States, are really capable of dealing with what's probably coming, and probably coming very soon, where AI is going to put a lot of people out of work. It just is, right? Like we're getting to a place where you can speak on the phone to an AI assistant and half of people won't even know that they've spoken on the phone to an AI assistant. So think about all of the phone calls you make and receive in a month, and think about how many people make a living being on the other end of that phone. And we won't need those people to do that anymore. So what do we do with those people? And more broadly, how do we distribute the benefits of AI? Because that's a cost savings for some company, right? They now have to not spend $60,000 a year or whatever they're paying these people to do what they do. Does the company who replaced that worker get to keep all of that benefit, or does that benefit have to be shared in society to ensure that people can continue to put a roof over their head and have food to eat and spend money for my music or whatever the case may be? How do we take care of people when we don't need their labor to the tune of like 30-40% of the workforce? So I worry more about that than the Terminator thing. I don't, maybe it'll happen, probably not in my lifetime, but I worry more about the disruption to the economic situation and people's livelihoods. And broader than that, I think we also learned during COVID that when people define themselves through work, that when that gets impacted, a lot of people have a lot of issues with that, right? Mental health issues and substance abuse ticks up, and people's health slips, and all sorts of terrible things happen. We know those things will happen. So I am more afraid and disappointed that we're not having ongoing conversations about how to mitigate those things at this point, as we really should be.
I guess we should tread carefully in this case, but
yeah,
I think we got to turn to you in case we need you to be a savior at some point. So, all right, fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. So,
yeah.
But I guess that computer behind you. Did you build that yourself, or what kind of brand is that?
It's a Mac Studio behind me. I've been working on Macs for about 20 years now, professionally and personally. And I'm not a holy warrior for the Mac, but as somebody who spends between work and doing this roughly, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week on a computer, I don't have to put up with their crap. They never flake out the way Windows machines do. I never turn the thing on and it costs me 2 hours because it's doing something weird that I couldn't figure out. I never have to reformat them. So they, for me, allow me to work faster with less BS than a Windows machine.
It's kind of got a little curve in it too. Almost.
The screen does, yeah, for sure. It's a very cheap, actually, ultra wide monitor. I think I paid under $200 for it. The nice thing about that particular curve of the screen is when you think about when you're mixing and you've got your faders laid out across the bottom of the screen, I've got a nice wide area for that where I can still have the top half of the screen to see what I'm working on my track view in Logic. So big fan of the big ultra wide monitor.
How's the horns up too for us using Logic because I use that as well. So,
yeah, I just kind of landed there almost by accident. When I was first getting back into this, I was using Studio One because I had it for free. I have PreSonus interfaces. I still have PreSonus interfaces in the studio, and they give you a copy of Studio One, and so I started using that. And I was working with someone. I think it was on the track "Fail." And he was the first collaborator that I had gotten interested in finishing a song. And he was using Logic. So I thought, well, I'm not married to this. I'll get a copy of Logic and see if I like it better. And at least I can bounce things back and forth with Ian without having, to convert between one DAW and the other. And I just stayed there. And the best thing about it is you buy it once and it's free forever. Major upgrades, minor upgrades, new features, like what it can do now compared to when I actually paid $200 for it is like, it's insane that Apple just keeps giving you perpetual updates for free. I'm sure at some point they're going to tell us, all right, you guys, you all have to spend another $200 to get these features. But in the meantime, I'm going to let it ride because they make a really great product. It's super stable. I never have problems with it. It rarely does anything weird. And it's never done anything so weird that I haven't been able to figure out how to recover it. So knock on wood, get some wood over here. It stays that way because, one of the themes in this room is just everything is, I'll give you a little view of the other side of the room. So there's my hardware side. And I've got a lot, but everything is permanently set up and attached and ready to rock. I may have to change some things on the patch bay, but if I want the Sequential Pro 3, I walk over to the Pro 3 and I start playing it and noise comes out of the speakers. And that was a really big deal for me because I don't have 10-hour days where I can come in here and just work for an uninterrupted span of time. I have 2 hours after work or an hour and a half, or if I wake up early in the morning, I'm up here for an hour and I need to be productive in that hour. So everything needs to be kind of always on, always ready to go. And that's it. I put a lot of effort in this studio into making it that way. Pro studios are like that too, right? Like the tools should really kind of get out of the way to the process of being creative. You should just be able to grab something and turn it on and go at it.
That's for sure. I have to admit, I was never really good with the computer side of it. I think I drove my one teacher crazy. This was in college, more so in college too, because in high school they're mainly teaching you how to just manually type on the keyboard. Mm-hmm. Like they put that orange slip over top of it, and it's like just go away and just try to know what the buttons are to see how well you can type a sentence.
I would actually fail that. I am not a great touch typist. I'm actually pretty good with the right hand. Like my right hand follows the way they would tell you to type, but my left hand, it does something strange. And it works for me. I can type very fast. I can type without looking at the keys, but it's not the way they would teach you how to do it in school. That part is clearly the computer side of this has always been something that was easy for me.
I guess. But are you mainly doing stuff for maybe customer service for like regular people, or is it like also businesses?
For work or for music? For work?
Work-wise, yeah.
Yeah, so I am the chief technology officer now of a small software and services company. So some of my team's work is customer comes in and has an idea for a product, or they have a business challenge that they need to solve, and we figure out how to construct a technology solution to address that challenge. So it's I don't think a lot of people think of software engineering as a creative thing. It really is. We invent this stuff from thin air. You have a conversation with somebody on the phone for a couple hours, and 3 months later, there's a working thing that didn't exist. There's engineering behind it. There's techniques that are reproducible and patterns that you follow and all of that kind of stuff. But in the end, it's closer to painting on a blank canvas than it is to repaving a road or something like that. Something that you would more traditionally think of as engineering. So my work is customer facing, and we build whatever comes in the door. We build that.
I was gonna say, if I wanted to have my own computer built, can I turn to you?
We professionally, we don't do hardware, but I do know how to build machines. I lied when I said I was all Mac. I have one Windows machine for my racing simulator, my iRacing simulator. iRacing it doesn't only run on Windows, but it runs best on Windows. So I did build a machine for that. I am capable of building those machines. So sure, I can hook you up with that. It's not really what I do, but yeah, why not?
I've been using Mac computers for a good while. Unfortunately, this one, unfortunately, I think I made the mistake of not upgrading to like the fastest stuff, so it doesn't really run as fast as it probably should. So unfortunately, it leads to some frustration and maybe some screen punching, if I like to say that.
Right. The Mac I'm speaking to you on now is it's not the lowest spec MacBook Air, but the next step up from that. I've had it about 2 months now, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's not my music making machine. That's the Mac Studio behind me, but for the basics of what we're doing now in web surfing and doing my taxes and stuff like that, it's a wonderful machine.
Yeah, I guess could that Mac Studio be used to do computer games, that sort of stuff?
It could, but I keep it separate just for studio use. I have brought that habit forward from the old days when I was doing this with PCs. Back in the early 2000s, late 90s, I actually had one of the, as far as I know, one of the first digital recording setups in Buffalo. People weren't really doing that in the late 90s. So it didn't work very well at all. When we first started, it was, you had to rig everything, and you had to be very careful about the hardware choices and doing things that we would do in enterprise servers, like mirrored disks, so that you could get enough disk throughput to get 40 tracks off a disk simultaneously, which was a challenge back then. And now computers, they don't care. They move that over USB, no problem. Back in the day, it was a lot trickier than that.
I can imagine. I mean, I was having frustrations with the old AOL computers used to have back then too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point, because that software was a pile of crap. And so if you had stuff like that on your machine that you were trying to use for recording, it would screw up other software on the machine. And so one of the big pieces of advice back then was you had to have a dedicated machine. You didn't even want it on the internet in most cases. You didn't want to take the risk of viruses, or people still do this to this day, which I think is kind of silly, but professionals will get a scheme that works and they'll stick with it for years. And in the meantime, the OS is 5 years out of date. It hasn't been patched in half a decade. And you don't really have to go that far anymore. I understand why professionals do that. They can't afford the downtime, and that makes some sense. But I see people on Facebook all the time like, oh, should I update? And I'm on whatever, this version of macOS that's 4 years old. And I'm like, well, now it's a problem. If you had been upgrading it in steps all along, it wouldn't have been a problem. But now that you're this far behind, yeah, it's going to be a potential issue for you. So yeah, nowadays I keep everything pretty much up to date. But I do still use a dedicated machine for music.
I try to too, but I fall behind on some of my updates as well. So unfortunately, I'm guilty of that as well.
Yeah, and you can't just do it willy-nilly. Like, I wait until I'm done with a particular project, and then I do all the updates and bring everything up to speed and open up some old projects and play around and make sure everything's cool before I move on. I actually just had an issue with my MPC, which is the brains of the setup. Like, if the MPC ain't working, nothing is working in here. And they released, I don't know, 6 months ago, a new, like, completely new version of the MPC operating system. It looks different. It works different. And it was just busted. Like, half of it didn't work. There were things that I relied on in my workflow, because, again, my workflow is to build things up on the MPC and then take them into the computer and finish them there. And the features that allowed me to move things easily to the computer just didn't work. And so I'm like, well, I'm screwed. I've got a half a dozen songs in the MPC that now I can't finish because I can't move them to the computer. I had to downgrade the MPC, and it was a whole thing, and I lost a bunch of time doing it. So you can still get stung, but I find that it's a lot less of an issue than it used to be. I generally just, when I'm at a good place where I can afford a couple of days, if things go sideways, then I update things, make sure everything's working.
Needless to say, that a few gray hairs to your head, didn't you?
You noticed?
Yeah. I'm working towards that way too. You start to see some of it like starting to fade, like right here. So
it's our reward for continuing to live. I'm okay with it.
Our continuing organ stupidity, whatever you think about it. So. Sorry, had something caught my throat right there. But all right. But I guess, what other social media do you use? Because I found you on Facebook, so that's how we.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. If you search for Stabbed by Prongs on any of them, you'll find me. On the Meta platforms, you'll get some hilarious sounding warning about violent content. There's no violent content on the Stabbed by Prongs page that I know of, so browse in a safe space. But yeah, I'm on both the Meta platforms, and I'm also on Blue Sky.
Is Blue Sky relatively new? I never really knew much about it.
It is relatively new. Yeah, it's sort of a Twitter-like thing. I'd say it's sort of a like mashup of Twitter and Instagram. It's not required to be visual the way Instagram is, but the size of things and the format of things and the content, like if you're an Instagram user, you'll find Blue Sky pretty familiar, even structurally. It is less angry, I would say, than Twitter. I've tried, even before music, for work, I've tried Twitter many times and just can't turn the fire hose down and can't seem to edit out the parts of Twitter that I don't want to deal with. So I've just left it permanently now. Sorry, Twitter users. Go to Blue Sky. I'm over there if you're interested.
I was sort of the same way. I haven't taken up Blue Sky, but Twitter was getting a little too political.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Blue Sky's got some of that on the opposite side, which I lean that way, so it bothers me less. If folks lean conservative, it'll bother them more. It's definitely turned down on Blue Sky compared to the way it is on Twitter. Like, it's inescapable on Twitter, and I find on Blue Sky that you can arrange things so you have minimal political imposition on your experience.
That's good. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
So, and let's get to the song, because I know I mentioned about the three earlier. But I guess first off, what made you want to do "Heat of the Moment" by Asia?
So Kimberly from Bow Ever Down, who's the vocalist on that track, and I've worked with her a bunch of times. We have 2 additional tracks that are going to come out at some point in the near future. Both of those are done. I just don't know when I'm actually going to put them out yet. She approached me and said, "Hey, I'm supposed to be on this 80s compilation. The guy I was working with isn't returning my calls, and do you want in?" And I was like, I'm a big prog rock fan. So like my mind went directly to like, I want to do like Owner of a Lonely Heart, or, you know, some like, let's take some cheesy ass 80s pop prog and do that and try to make it cool. And Heat of the Moment, like, just that one popped right into my head. I'm like, oh, that ticks all the boxes, right? Like, it had its thing in that Judd Apatow movie, and it's, you know, kind of nerdy. It's in 5. The guitar solo in it is terrible. Love Steve Howe, love Yes, not his finest work. But I just thought, and I love the idea of doing that song with a female vocalist and a pop-oriented vocalist. And she checks both of those boxes, and I was lucky that she was into it. I didn't know at the time that she asked me that it was a benefit for Charles Levi from My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult, who I've gotten to know over social media since then, and additionally met a lot of people in the scene over the course of doing that compilation. That I've made a lot of friends and a lot of good contacts, and I now have people that I can bounce mixes off of, and new collaborators that I can work with through that experience. So it was really great. But she brought me in on that. I picked the song. She loved the idea of the song, and it's cool because I got to play guitar on it too. I don't use a lot of guitar in my music, so I got to indulge that side of things. And yeah, was really happy with the way that turned out, and honored to be on compilations with folks like Stoneburner and others. Violet Wanda, Doors in the Labyrinth. I got turned on to those groups as well, doing that. Horror House, Scott Harris's project. A lot of great bands. I apologize to anybody that I've missed, because I just met so many cool people in the process of getting that compilation together and getting that song together, who I've kept in touch with and hope to work with someday.
I guess I was leading into this question right here, but the 2 songs I really dug were "The Fall of the Empire" and "Stay." So I guess just those 2, they could delve into some of the lyric topics on the other ones. But what are those songs got to delve into?
So "Stay" is another of Kimberly's songs. That was the first one that we ever did together. I kind of heard that track almost with a rap vocal over it, and I couldn't get anybody to kind of jump onto my vision of that. And then I met Kimberly on Facebook, and she was at the time just like, I'll sing on anything. Send me a track and I'll sing on it. I don't care. Like, give me a week, I'll sing on it. So I thought, okay, why not? I'll take a chance. So I sent the song over to her, and she sent it back. And I just loved the vocal. I loved what she did with it. And I have kind of a love-hate with the way she does it. She only ever gives me one vocal track. Like, she gets a good take and she sends it, and I don't get doubles and I don't get harmonies. And sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, I really wish I could get some more bits of material to work with. But then on the other side of that, I'm like, okay, now I get to be creative with this. I have vocoders, I have electronic voices, I have synthesizers, I have all of this crap that I can work with to try to fill around that and especially on Stay, there's auto tune on that, there's chorus on that, there's distortion on that, there's vocoder on that, there's Wave's vocal harmony on that, there's every tool in the toolbox kind of got used on that song, and I really dig the way the vocals came out on that. As far as the lyrics, I'd have to defer to her. I think it's as pretty much as plain as the lyrics are. She wrote the lyrics. Stay with me just a little bit more. It's a song about wanting to keep a relationship together in the face of something, is what I take from it. Follow the Empire I can speak to a little bit more directly, since I sang that and wrote the lyrics for that. That song is, for all me not wanting to get political on this show, it's straight up politics. It was written about January 6th. I don't really understand how people let that whole thing go. I mean, people kicked in the doors on live TV, and yeah, our elected representatives are hiding under the desks, and people are calling their loved ones and telling them that they might not come home. So I love you. I was just really, really, really angry about that. And sort of atypically for me, or maybe typically, since this is the only way my lyrics and vocals really make it into a Stab by Prongs song, it just kind of came out in one big chunk. And I had the idea that, that song in general, it was one that I really believed in from the very beginning. And in the very beginning, it didn't sound great, but the roots of the song were there. And I really felt strongly about it. I felt like In There was a good song. And I couldn't get anybody to buy into it. And I sort of thought, well, I'll show you people. Now I got this idea, right? I got these lyrics that fit the song. I'm sure that I can do this well enough to give me good material to then manipulate in the song. And that's another song on that record where I really just went at the vocals with everything that I had. They're very heavily edited, they're filtered, they're distorted, they're very heavily affected. And I had a lot of fun doing all of that. I really had a lot of fun working on that song. And I go back and forth internally on how good I think it came out. Some days I love it. Some days I'm like, maybe it could have come out better. Yeah, it's the curse of being the guy who built it. I only hear the mistakes. I only hear the flaws. It's nice to set it aside for a while and come back to it 6 months later, a year later, and then you think, like I listened to it recently. I was like, I like it. Yeah, came out good. So, yeah, and again, I am proud of that song particularly because it's one of two on that record or three on that record. There's one with no vocalist where it's me start to finish. I did every note, every knob twist, every bit of work in the DAW. I did all of it. So when you come out of it with something that you're happy with, it's a proud moment.
That's for sure. And actually, it was one of the old quotes: "Is like you are your own worst enemy."
Absolutely. And trying to. That song's a good example of trying to figure out when to let go of something, because arguably I held on to that and worked on it too long. I probably should have tried to work faster and stepped all over it a little bit less, maybe a little bit of a gentler touch. I've learned since then. So I try to now work faster and not get myself into the point where I'm so tunneled in on things that lots of people won't even hear. Careful listener might hear them, but most people won't pay that much attention to it. And in the end, when you just continue to process things to that degree, they come out sounding overcooked. So yeah, aside from that song being a little bit overcooked, I'm generally happy with it. I'm glad you connected with it. It's got a good beat. It's one that makes you move around a little bit.
As there's more Stay, I tend to like it a little bit more. So
yeah,
but that one had a nice beat to it. So
yeah,
but,
that's
but I
more
guess
of a pop song, with an industrial side to it, which is really, I guess, what I've settled into as being my thing. Those are the songs that have come out that I'm most proud of, are those industrial pop kind of tracks. Heat of the Moment fell in along those lines as well. Pretty much all the stuff I do with Kimberly are on my hit list.
that's pretty cool. But I guess what other topics do you like to cover on this recent release? I don't know what you're doing on future releases.
Yeah, so on that record, both of the songs that I sang are political in nature. Both January 6th inspired. There is a song called Hell Hath No Fury, which I couldn't get anybody interested in and didn't have lyrics for. So I went dumpster diving on YouTube for people who had like 3 views on their videos. And, and it's all irritated women and the men that have wronged them, let's say. So it's all women having justified freakouts at their exes and things like that. That got cut up and sampled. So that was fun. As far as, other songs on the record, I'm trying to think. Fail is a sort of our relationship is now over and I want to watch you fall over type of song. So a little bit of a revenge kind of vibe to that. Ian White was the vocalist on that and the lyricist on that, and he did a great job on that. 111, I don't know what was in Rye's head when he wrote those lyrics. I'll have to ask him someday. I don't really know. There's a bit of everything in there. It's sort of like a trailer trash hip hop meets Nine Inch Nails kind of vibe to that song. It's one of my favorites, but lyrically, I don't know what's going on in that song, to be perfectly honest. Two Steps Back, it has an interesting history to it. That was the song that I covered from 3 Pound Mind Trip from my band back in the day. That song is all inside jokes and things that sound cool. And what I love about Randy's lyrics, and for me, a great set of lyrics in general are always like this, is that the listener can really bring their own interpretation to the song. I'm not sure what other people have in their head when they listen to that, but there's a line like, the hammer has no beat. We had a singer who didn't work out, and he used to literally pound on the floor of the practice space with a hammer. And the song is kind of about him and his exit. We had a broken clock in the practice space, and it would go forwards and then it would stop and tick backwards and then go forwards again. And there's a line about every backwards tick can't stop the clock from calling me. That's just literally about the clock in our practice space. But when you put all these lyrics together, they form some kind of story that's open to interpretation, which I think is really cool. And now that Randy's back in town, I'm hoping to work with him a little bit more. We've been talking about a future project that we're gonna start working on once I get the CP finished. Yeah, so inspiration for the most part comes from the people I collaborate with, and to the extent that I know what's in their heads when they write the lyrics is, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Inspiration comes in many forms, as I say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I try not to get in the way of that either. Like I have some hard lines, like, somebody came to me with racist lyrics or something I really didn't believe in or didn't want to put my name to, I would certainly push back on that. But aside from that, I tend to let people do their thing. I wouldn't want somebody to come to me and say, hey, can you do, music for me, but don't use this sound, or don't, turn the virus off and don't use it. I'd be like, I don't think I can do that. So I try to give people as wide a berth as possible because it's art and it's supposed to be, even for me as being involved in creating the art, it should challenge me as well when people bring their own perspective to what's going on.
That's pretty cool. Actually, I was gonna say, like, it'd be one of those controversies where, like, Greg ends up being part of this white supremacist band or something like that there too. So
yeah, that would be a hard no.
I mean, I know there was a story about Jack Owen kind of getting accidentally involved with this. I think they were calling it like White Power Band or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
It was like one of those things you got to like explain how you're going to get yourself out of this mess. So
it's an interesting conversation and thought experiment for people to do, and I would encourage people to do this. Is challenge yourself to think about, you know, in your work. People are very tempted to say, oh, people shouldn't be allowed to do this or people shouldn't be allowed to do that, right? And so for me, I do sometimes record other artists and mix records and things like that. So if somebody comes to me with X, where's the line, right? Like, at what point do I say no? It's different when it's Stabbed by Prongs because it's my music and it's me front and center on it. And if it attracts enough attention in a negative way, I'm the one who's going to catch the backlash. So that's one thing. But if I'm mixing your record and, you know, I'm going to have a little credit in the lower left corner of Bandcamp that nobody is going to read, you know, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. If you're writing songs about how great Donald Trump is, am I going to say no to mixing that? I wouldn't. But, you know, it's an interesting thing that everybody should think about. Like, where is your line and why is the line there? And are you actually affording other people the same latitude that you're giving yourself, which is where it becomes interesting. Because I may say, I don't think we should be allowed to do this, but am I really stepping on what is reasonable for other people to think or believe in or act or whatever?
that's pretty cool. So, and I guess, do you have any new material coming out here pretty soon? Or I guess what's the plans for this year and going beyond?
Yeah, so I have 2 songs completed. I have 2 songs nearly completed, and I have 2 songs with vocalists. So the plan is to get the 6 together and perhaps a 7th that I'm working on, depending on how long it takes other people to accomplish their parts. To get that all together into a release. I'm hoping that release will come by the end of the summer. Because I want to do more work with just recording and mixing other people's projects. I mentioned a potential project with Randy, my old bass player, lyricist from 3 Pound Mind Trip. That'll probably start to go later in the year. I have been getting a lot more into the recording side of things. I'm actually taking a class at the Goo Goo Dolls studio and doing some work there with my instructor. Yeah, they have a fantastic space. Apparently they built it for themselves and decided that since they weren't using it, it should be open to the public. It's got a just like dream stuff for a guy who works in his attic. I got a big SSL board and all sorts of cool stuff. And I just love making records. So the more I can do that, the better. They take time for a guy who doesn't do that for a living, right? They take potentially months to do an album with a band, to record and mix. So I got to be a little bit careful of what I promise for Stabbed by Prongs and then what I take on outside of it, because before you know it, a year is gone and I haven't put anything out. And I have one more track for a follow-up to Retronomicon, which is the compilation that Heat of the Moment came out on. That the track has been done for almost a year, and I don't really know what the deal is with the record, but the record hasn't come out yet. So I'm just waiting for that to come out. The original Retro was an 80s theme. This one is a 90s theme. And took on a grunge classic, and it came out really, really, really well. I can't wait for people to hear it, but I don't want to spoil it, and I don't want to steal the thunder from the release because Levi needs our help, and I want people to go out and buy the album. So I'll keep that under my hat for the moment, but people are going to like it. And a lot of the same people that were involved in the first one are involved in the second one. So for folks who did buy that album, if you haven't, please go out on Bandcamp. It's called Retronomicon. Paraluna Records is the label it came out on. Everything benefits Charles Levi. So go buy the album. You'll really enjoy. If you don't find something on there that you like, then you're just not a music fan. It's a really, really good record. Also, while I'm dropping that, I'll give a shout out to the compilation that Regen Magazine put out. It was a tribute to Die Warza, Big Hit Radio, it's called. And that album is just stacked with really incredible talent who did a bunch of really great covers. And that benefits, I don't remember the exact name of the charity, but it's a LGBT youth related charity. And getting to be on a compilation with Stabbing Westward was like, for me, is totally geeked out on that. Yeah. Yeah. I went full schoolgirl on that when I found out. Stoneburner's on that one too. Violet Wanda's on that one as well. And a whole bunch of other people. Jane Jensen has a great track on that record. Blue Eyed Christ is on that record. Dog Tablet. It goes on and on. Death Loves Veronica. Like, everybody on it is great. So go out and buy that one as well.
They gave you so busy, as you said earlier. So yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as what's coming for me, I mentioned the EP. Singles will come at some point. I don't know which one yet, and I don't know when. I want to be sure that I know when the record is going to be finished before I drop a single, and then people are waiting 3 months. I kind of lose my momentum from the single if I do it that way. So I'm holding off until I know more exactly when the record is going to be out, but it should be out around September.
So you got to make sure to keep that algorithm happy, which I'm sure you probably dealt with a good bit in your line of work too. So
yeah, it's actually something I struggle with a lot. Is I don't really totally understand how to work the algorithm to my advantage and get people interested in listening. It's the biggest challenge in what I do is actually getting people to just listen to the song. I am totally fine if you listen to the song and you don't like it. If you think I suck, cool. Thanks for listening. If you haven't listened at all, please do. I can take it if people don't think the music is good, but I get really frustrated trying to get the word out and not doing a good job of that. So that's why I'm here. And I thank you for having me on and helping me get the word out. It's a big help.
No worries. I'll make sure I spread the gospel whenever this actually comes out here too. So
awesome.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Actually, Greg, we're now down to the fun questions right now. We breezed through all the fun ones right now, but here, there's some extra fun ones. Ready?
All right, I'm ready.
So we'll start here in the beginning right here with, what would you say is currently your favorite food?
My favorite food currently. I'm going to go with pizza because I've been on a diet and I don't let myself have it very often. So since I can't have it, it's currently my favorite.
It's one of his guilty pleasures, should we say?
Yeah, for sure.
Is there a particular brand of pizza, or is it like...
No, I mean, Buffalo is, I think Buffalo has the greatest pizza on earth. One of the aspects of my job as a software consultant is I get to travel to a lot of places, spend a lot of time in New York City and a lot of time in Chicago. So I'm familiar with the big boys. I'll take pizza here over any place I've been, period. It's just better here. The average pizza here is better than anywhere else.
Not only that, but home with the original buffalo sauce. Really wanted to say that.
Yeah, chicken wings were invented at the Anchor Bar, which is 3 blocks from my house. It's right over there.
All right. Well, we should know who to turn to whenever we come up to Buffalo if we're not going to Niagara next. So.
Yep. Come up to the Anchor Bar. Gabriel's Gate is in my opinion the best wings.
I guess every now and again, do you sneak up, go across the pond there to see Niagara Falls?
Yeah, I do come across the border. Not so much since COVID, but excellent Chinese food in Fort Erie, and I live about 5 minutes drive from the Peace Bridge. So, in times where getting over the border was a little easier and a little less stressful, I used to go all the time. A little less often now.
For the obvious reason. So
yeah.
Okay, but all great choices. I'm not sure if you do drink, but if you do, what would you say is your favorite alcoholic drink? And what's your favorite non-alcoholic drink?
I'm a caffeine-free diet Pepsi man, and I haven't had a drink in 18 years, 5 months, and 31 days. But who's counting? I'll caveat that I've become recently a big fan of the Starbucks Nitro Cold Brew because it's like Guinness but coffee flavored. It has the same consistency and texture and the same carbonation as Guinness, and I was a big fan of Guinness back in the day when I still drank. So I'm going to go with that.
Did you have a real bad stint with alcohol? Is that
I did, yeah, I did. I was never at the point where I needed like rehab or 12-step or anything like that, but there was a point where it became obvious that it was not a positive force in my life, and so I had to leave it aside.
Fair enough. Do you have to go with the diet stuff, the Diet Pepsi, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it is what it is, man. But you can't take my coffee. Like, it's all I've got left. So I drink a lot of coffee and gave up caffeine a few years ago as well. So decaf coffee and caffeine-free Diet Pepsi.
I was going to turn into one of those Gollum sort of phrases, be like, my precious little thing with the coffee
deal. With coffee, maybe. That's a possibility.
Well, there goes insanity before you know it. So, right. Okay, choices. So, not sure if you're a real big movie nerd, but what would you say is your favorite movie? And then what's your favorite TV series if you'd like to share one?
All right. I'm going to have to go with two sets of movies. Star Wars. I've seen every Star Wars film since Empire on opening day. So going back to being like 8 years old. And Lord of the Rings. Seen that more times than I can count. Read the books more times than I can count. As far as TV, I watch a lot of TV shows now. I'm a big fan of the kinds of productions we get now on streaming services. I'm totally into The Last of Us at the moment. And if I had to pick a favorite TV show kind of all time, I think I'd go with Battlestar Galactica, the remake, not the 1970s one. I think I've watched the whole show 3 times now, and I'm in progress on the 4th. I watch it in the gym while I'm on the elliptical.
Jeez, he keeps himself busy now, even on the elliptical and all.
Yeah. Well, I got to do
the workout
because that thing is friggin' boring, man.
I guess that's why I put the TVs either on the machine itself or somewhere out there.
Exactly, yeah. So I bring my show with me on the phone and watch it on the phone while I'm on the elliptical.
I still remember when we had the originals, the Star Wars. It was on VHS tapes. Mm-hmm. It seemed like it had the. I guess we could say like the behind the scenes, like in the beginning there too, where it would show George Lucas and maybe the other people who were perhaps doing the animatronics or anything else to really bring it to life. At least back in that day, since obviously you didn't have CGI, that sort of thing.
Right.
So
it was kind of better then, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just doing the get off my lawn thing.
Well, I guess what you make of the sequels and Disney taking over?
Mixed bag, obviously. Talking about the TV shows though, like I really loved Andor. I really loved Mandalorian. I really liked Ashoka. The Acolyte was a mixed bag. I'm kind of happy it's coming back. Originally, I was like, we can let that one go. But then they announced another season, and I thought, I'm kind of excited for that. Yeah, I guess it's complicated when you take on material like that because people are so attached to it and they have such strong opinions. And I am certainly that person. If you ask my friends, they certainly, when I was in college, like I would just rant about how terrible people's music was and things like that. So I have a little bit of that in me. I had to make a real conscious decision to say, I'm just going to put all of that aside. And if I walk out of the movie entertained, then I'm going to call that a win. And if I'm not entertained, then I'm going to call that a loss. And for better or for worse, I was entertained with all of the prequels and all of the sequels. I wouldn't say they were all fantastic movies, but I was entertained, and I have rewatched several of them over the years. So I guess that's as good an answer as I can give. Some of them I like more than others, but they were all decent.
I think most people would say the prequels are probably, maybe more so with my generation, they'd say those were the peak Star Wars. And then
Interesting.
Or at least, I should say the people who were at least born in the 90s, and then the parents introduced them to the OGs back then. And then
yeah. So for people like me who were kids when the OGs came out, I think that first prequel did a lot of damage to those fans. The Jar Jar thing was a little over the top. I didn't mind it so much, and I think that whole closing fight scene with Darth Maul is like 20 minutes of the best Star Wars that they ever made. Probably the best lightsaber duel in the whole franchise. So, maybe as a movie it was so-so, but it had that redeeming quality to it. I enjoyed the second and third prequel a lot. Those are both close to my heart.
That's for sure. The whole thing with Jar Jar, I didn't really care for it, but like, it's like, dude, it's just an actor, has to be African American, and you're throwing these threats and insults at him. Come on.
Star Wars was always that way. Like, it always had a little bit of cheese to it. It always had enough stuff for the little kids. Like, I think I was 6 when I saw Star Wars, the original Star Wars, 6 or 7. I was probably 8 when Empire came out. We lived behind a drive-in movie theater, which for younger people, they're like, what the hell is that? We lived behind a drive-in movie theater, so I could sit as a little kid in my back window in my room and get the audio on my radio and watch the movie. And I must have watched Empire 30 times out the back window of my house on opening day and the next month after that. And that was a big part of me growing up. But yeah, there always was that kind of childish aspect to Star Wars. It's part of what it is. And I never really understood why people got so crazy about the whole Jar Jar thing, because it been like that all along. Maybe not so blatantly obvious, but it had been there all along.
I would say I always did like the way Kat did the voice, that sort of stuff. So,
and nobody complained about the Mandalorian, right? Like, everybody loves the Mandalorian, and Baby Yoda is adorable and great for the kids and sells a ton of plushy toys. So nobody complains about that. I don't know. I don't see what the big deal is. I enjoyed it.
At least up until season 2. Then after that, it seemed to kind of go downhill.
Yeah, it's hard to follow up a great season. That happens in all kinds of shows.
I guess so, but all great choices there nonetheless. Yeah. And here's how I'll word the last question, because I think it might be a little tough. But if you do have a favorite song of all time, you can feel free to share. Otherwise, if that's too much, just name your top 3 bands of all time that you would consider your favorites.
I will answer both. Don't Follow by Alice in Chains is my favorite all-time song. My top 3 bands: Rush, Frontline Assembly, KMFDM.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I thought that was actually the Rush album. That was actually a Rush album. So KMFDM.
3 bands. No. If you're asking me to name my favorite Rush record, that's an impossible thing to decide. We'll be here all day.
I would say Moving Pictures really seems to be up there, but I guess you're right. They do have good endless.
It depends on the day. Today it might be Moving Pictures. Tomorrow it might be Signals. The next day it might be Clockwork Angels. The day after that it might be
Hemispheres.
Farewell to Kings or Hemispheres, yeah, or 2112, or I don't know. It's impossible.
The underrated gem that we want to say so. So,
Mm.
hey. So, Greg, we are down to one more question in my podcast right here. Before we jump into it, would you like to ask me anything or say any final words before we jump into it?
No, just thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No worries. And again, shout out to Swill, Simon, and Scott for coming on here too and being friends with this guy right here. So, but if there's nothing else, here's how the last question goes. And I kind of changed it up a little bit here too because I used to delve with COVID back in the day, but given a lot of negative stuff that's been kind of going on, I know you talked a good bit about political and all that sort of stuff. I think these days people need some sort of hope to maybe help try to get them out the door and move their lives forward, so to speak. So, what would be your message of hope for people and musicians out there so they can try to move forward with their lives?
I'm a big believer in the idea that the little things matter in big ways, right? So the whole kind of think globally, act locally thing. I try to leave every situation and every person and every place that I come into contact with. My aim is to leave it a little better than I found it. And I think that if everybody did that, I think that if you're not doing that now and you do that going forward, you're going to find yourself more hopeful, more happy, more productive in your life, and generally speaking, more satisfied. Your stress level will go down. And it's a very simple and subtle thing, very small mental shift to say, you know, when I'm in a situation, and even if it's somebody who pisses me off, man, right? Like you're at the grocery store and the lady in front of you is on speakerphone and you're waiting for the self-checkout and she's going super slow because she's yakking on the phone. Like, just swallow it, right? Like, is it really that big a deal? Does it really screw up your world, right? And if you're that person, conversely, if you're in the grocery store and you get a phone call, just think to yourself, like, am I making this grocery store an easier place to live in or a harder place to live in, right? So try to turn the volume down on your life. Try to make decisions as you move through the world to leave people and places and things in a slightly better shape than you found them in. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's what I'm going to go with.
No, that's pretty good. Everyone's got at least a different take on it, but yeah, sometimes you get the cliche ones. Don't give up. That's our deal. Push forward.
Well, there's that, but that to me, that's never really an option, right? So, and I think that it's applicable in like it's a kind of a self-centered answer if you think about it. Where don't give up is like whatever you're attempting to do, keep doing it because someday it'll happen for you. And I think that. That's great. Like I mentioned before, I make music for me primarily, and if people listen to it, that's awesome. I love that people listen to it. I hope people will listen to it and enjoy it. But if they don't, the primary purpose of making the music was for me, and that need is still satisfied. But it's not the way to live in general. You can't just live for yourself. Making things better for other people, anybody who volunteers, anybody who does charity work, anybody who works with kids or animals or whatever they do will tell you that their life is better for them doing that, and other people's lives are better, the animals' lives are better, whatever it is that you're helping out with. You know, you're making a difference to those people, but you're also making a difference to yourself. So that's the message I would leave with is if you can make things better for the rest of the world, you're also making things better for yourself. So I would concentrate on that, and everything else sort of falls into place.
Fair enough. And spoke like a true prodigy. So, all right. But thank you so much for sharing that, Greg. And we reached the end of my podcast right here. We talked for, it's going to be a little over an hour and 40 minutes, but
wow.
I guess before we close out, would you like to give any final words, any shout outs to anybody?
Shouts to everybody who has worked with me, everybody who's given me vocals, lyrics, anybody who's done any work on any of the songs. Thank you. Even if you've just listened to a mix and told me it was good or told me it sucked, thank you. Yeah, thanks to everybody who helps to make this happen. Thanks to anyone who's listened. Thanks to anyone who's bought the record. While we're on that topic, everything that I have is pay what you want on Bandcamp. So go look me up, stabbedbyprongs.bandcamp.com. Steal the music. I encourage you to. I don't care about the couple of dollars that I make off the album sale. It's great when people vote with their wallet, but I'm more concerned with people giving the music a chance. So go out and download it all for free and decide for yourself if you think it's worthwhile.
I just like the system of down. Steal this album. That's their deal.
Exactly. Steal the music. I encourage you.
Well,
back in the day, I came up at a time when people discovered new music from tapes, man. People would make mixtapes for their friends, and I just bought this album or somebody gave me this record, I'll tape it for you. Like that's how people discovered music in the 80s and 90s, and I think it's still valuable today. So I give it away. Go stream it on Spotify, go download it from Bandcamp. Just listen.
I think also back in the day they were also trying to promote it when it was actually the band members themselves, or at least that's how it was with the band Down. That was also Phil on Stubble's other project. Be like, you should check this band Down out. I don't know who they are, but they're killer music too. So it's that sort of deal. And I guess just real quick for the audience sake, what social media and streaming platforms are you on so they can check you out and maybe interact?
Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Stabbed by Prongs on all three.
I guess also Spotify, and you're on all streaming platforms?
Yeah, all streaming platforms and Bandcamp.
All right.
And I think it's all streaming platforms. It's DistroKid. So if you're a Tidal user, it's on there. If you're Diesel user, it's on there too, I guess. Yeah, I'm a Spotify person myself, so go stream on Spotify or Pandora.
We're on all major streaming platforms and all that stuff.
We are.
That's the beauty of DistroKid. So yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. But to close out like this, everyone, my guest today was Greg, aka Stabbed by Prongs, out there in Buffalo, New York. So let's go hit up all stream platforms, all social media and everything here too. Let's go help our brother out as well as donate. Do you say you are part of any charities right now? Did you say any proceeds?
Yeah, I would encourage people to buy the albums, the Retronomicon compilation, which is on Paraluna Records. So look for Retronomicon on Bandcamp. Then the maximum amount of money goes to Charles Levi. Shout out to Levi. And the Big Hit Radio compilation from Regen. So I would encourage people to if they want to support something that I support to go to one of those organizations and get yourself a great collection of songs as well. And I'm a dog person, so your local animal shelter.
All right, you heard from this guy right here too. So contribute today, help this guy out too, as well as all the charities in and around his neck of the woods, or I guess wherever they are. So. Greg, thank you again so much again for coming on here, mate. And once again, shout out to Swell and being good friends with Scott too. So you stay safe because it's one pretty messed up world out there.
Absolutely.
And a quick pose. Stay tuned, y'all.